Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today I have my Q3 wrap up for my birthday reading project. So these are all the books that were suggested to me by you guys to read before my 40th birthday. And these are all the books that I read in the past 3 months. I read 9 books and they were very varied in what they were about and kind of the types of books that they were, and also in my star rating. So it was a very interesting quarter for sure. At the end of this video, I will let you know which book was my favorite, and the person that suggested that book to me is going to win a prize of their own from me as a thank you. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. I started out reading Clay Girl by Heather Tucker, and this was recommended to me by Larissa Suris. And this one is an adult literary fiction, and it follows a young girl and kind of her family life as she's growing up, and she kind of has a hard time, and in order to kind of escape from a lot of what's going on around her with her family and people in her life, she ends up creating this imaginary friend, and he's a seahorse. And he's fantastic. He was by far my favorite character of the entire book, and he was the imaginary friend, but he was good. He was a good, like, really witty, but really important for her character. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was definitely sad. It was on the sadder side of what I read this time, but I still really enjoyed it. The writing was beautiful. Heather Tucker's a great writer. And again, the seahorse was fantastic and he just made me happy. And yeah, I enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. Next one I picked up is Confess by Colleen Hoover, and this was recommended to me by my friend Jenny. Her and I both love Colleen Hoover, and when she wanted to suggest something to me, she said, "You haven't read this one by Colleen, read this one." I was like, okay. So I loved this book naturally because it's Colleen. I have yet to give Colleen Hoover anything other than 5 stars so far. Yeah, I loved this one. This follows a woman who has a hard past. I don't want to give anything away at all, so I'm not going to, but she has a hard past. She ends up moving from one place to the other for a fresh start and to kind of make amends for some things and get her life back on track. She is needing a job. She has a job as a hairdresser, but she needs more money in order to make ends meet. She just happens to see a sign outside of an art studio that is begging for help, and it is an artist who owns the studio and lives there. He has an opening for a show that night and he desperately needs help, and they just so happen to meet on the street outside of his building, and he needs help, she needs a job, so they end up working together and a relationship starts from there. However, of course, it's Colleen. There's secrets. It's complicated. It makes sense why it's complicated, but you wish it wasn't complicated, and that's just how Colleen makes me feel every single time. And I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Really loved it. It's short. I flew through it really quickly, and yeah, so 5 stars. Next one I picked up is A Dirty Job by Christopher Moore, and this was recommended to me by Megan Mitchell. Megan actually ended up sending me a copy of the book to read, so thank you very much, Megan. That was really sweet of you. Christopher Moore is an author that I've read from before, and I really just had fun every time I read one of his books, but it's been years since I've picked one up. So I was excited to get to this one. This one was really funny, and Christopher Moore writes a lot of satire. So his books are kind of over the top, ridiculous. A lot of times they have fantasy elements like talking animals and like all sorts of weird stuff, but then it's funny at the same time. So this one follows a man who loses his wife, and he walks into her hospital room planning to visit her and hang out with her. However, there is a strange person standing over her bed. So her husband freaks out, you know, kicks the guy out, like, "Who are you? We don't know you, get out of our room," and all this stuff. Then he realizes his wife is dead. So he is suspecting this man of killing her. He's not totally wrong, because the man he saw was the Grim Reaper. So, a Grim Reaper in a mint suit, by the way. And it's not normal for any human to be able to see him. So the fact that our main character saw him and like was able to interact with him and have a conversation was the Grim Reaper's sign that, hey, here's your replacement because he can see you. So he becomes the Grim Reaper. And has to, number one, come to terms with that, because he's now responsible for being there when people die or taking their lives. And the way that it happens is very specific, and it was really creative. I really liked it. And yeah, and so he's dealing with this and he is not happy about it. So it was very, very interesting. Yeah, it was just crazy and over the top and ridiculous and a really good time. So if you have never read Christopher Moore, I would definitely pick up one of his books. This is a good one, and I give it 4 stars. The next one I picked up is The Paris Wife by Paula McLean, and this was recommended to me by Robin at Robin's Egg Blue, so thank you, Robin. And this is a historical fiction book about Ernest Hemingway's first wife. That is a hard sentence. Ernest Hemingway's first wife. And her name was Hadley. So it follows them meeting and courting and how they got together and their wedding and their marriage, and then eventually the disintegration of their marriage. And it was really interesting. It wasn't as beautifully written as I wanted, I guess you could say. And I kind of finished this book feeling like I wanted more. I just wanted more from it. I didn't get quite as much from it as I wanted. I got a lot about him and his quirks and his kind of tortured artist personality, I guess you could say. He was very dramatic, but he also is one of the greatest writers of our time. So there's that. But it did kind of go through some time periods as well, like such as the bullfighting and things like that. That is what The Sun Also Rises is based off of, which I have on my shelf and I haven't read yet. But so I thought that was interesting, like that all that is based on some experiences that they actually went through together. And yeah, it was good. There were also mentions of F. Scott Fitzgerald, like they were friends with him, so that was really cool. So I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't really blown away by it. So for me, it was a 3-star. It was good, but just not like, wow, this book was so amazing. But I enjoyed it. The next one I picked up is The Given Day by Dennis Lehane. And this was recommended to me by Debbie Murphy. Now this one is another historical fiction, and it follows 2 different families right around the time of the kind of civil rights movement is when it's starting to happen. And we follow a family of cops in Boston who are white, and then another family that is black. And you kind of see how these families are being affected by everything going on around them and things like that. Now, this one, I can't even really give you a whole bunch of a synopsis except for that, because I still kind of don't really know exactly everything that happened in this book, even though I read it, because I felt like through most of this book, I was just trying to figure out which family we're following, because the chapters were not labeled as far as which family we're going to. And sometimes it took a couple of pages for me to kind of figure out which family we're following. I had to wait for a name, I had to wait for a certain circumstance to be mentioned or something to know which family I'm following. So it was really hard for me to picture it in my head because of that. It also jumped around a whole lot, like a whole lot. So that was a little bit confusing. Babe Ruth was in it. I did have someone tell me that Babe Ruth makes appearances in a lot of Dennis Lehane's books, because Dennis Lehane is from Boston, so big, you know, Red Sox and all that. Babe Ruth, okay. It just didn't make sense to me why he was there. It really didn't. And like, he was there in the very, very beginning, and so I thought it was a book about Babe Ruth. Oh, nope. And then we're going to jump to a family that has nothing to do with Babe Ruth. Okay. So I was confused through a lot of this book, which was unfortunate. I gave it like a 2.5. I think I gave it a 3 on Goodreads, but like, and only because I was pretty confused and I didn't really see the whole point in anything. I didn't get enough of the story that I thought it was going to be about to really make me like it. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, this wasn't for me. I'm not giving up on Dennis Lehane. I actually do want to give him another try as an author. So I do want to read maybe some more of his newer works and see what I think about that. But we'll see when that's going to happen. The next one I picked up is Coming Home by Rosamund Pilcher, and this was recommended to me by Celine Moran. And this was another historical fiction, and this one was very long. I actually started this, I think, I want to say in February, and I just now finished it. So it did take me a very, very long time. I slowly but surely made progress every week in it. So it was just kind of like I was always kind of reading it. But the reason it took me so long is because it was a very, very long book. And there wasn't really any parts that I just got to a point where I couldn't put the book down. I didn't really get there. And so because of that, it was just a slow and steady race the whole way. I did end up enjoying it. It was good. I really liked the character of Judith, who was our main character. And Judith is growing up in England, and she is separated from her family because her parents and her younger sister end up moving to Singapore for something for her dad's work, I think. And they wanted more for Judith to stay with her aunt and to go to a really good boarding school for girls so that she can have a really good future. And they feel like going to this boarding school is going to be her best bet. At this boarding school, she meets a girl named Loveday, and they strike up a friendship. And Loveday is very much part of the elite community, I guess you could say, of her town. And so it's a whole different mindset, and it's a whole different style of living, and Judith kind of gets thrown in there because she's her friend, and they really bond. And since she's estranged from her family, she really attaches herself to this girl. It was interesting. Again, it was just very steady the whole way. I was never really oh my gosh, this is so good, I just want to see what happens next. It was never like that. And I think part of it is it was very, very detailed, almost to the point where I got a little bogged down by it. It's okay, it would take me 5 minutes to read 3 pages because of, I was just all right, and I would get distracted a lot because of it. So I think maybe if the book were not so detailed and it was much more condensed and the pacing were a little bit faster, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But overall, I did enjoy the story. And again, Judith was a great character. I really liked her. And yeah, so I gave this one 3 stars. And then next I picked up The Zookeeper's Wife by Diane Ackerman, and this was recommended to me by my friend Brooke Mine. Okay, so I went into this book very excited, and the premise of it is a family or a couple that owns a zoo in Germany, and they end up using their zoo to house Jewish refugees and hide them from German soldiers. That sounds amazing, right? No, that's really not what happened. I mean, it did, but I spent half of this book going, what are we even talking about? This has nothing to do with the story. And I did have a couple of people mention in my wrap-up when I talked about this, that this is actually a nonfiction book, which I did not know. I thought it was a historical fiction. So, and the fact that I read it and I didn't know it was a nonfiction is very interesting as well. So it wasn't very clear, I guess you could say. And it just went in so many different directions as well. When we did get that type of story, I enjoyed those parts of it, but there were not enough of it at all. Not even half of this book was that part of the story. And it just went into a lot of facts about the war, and it would be here, and then it would be oh, let's talk about this over here that has nothing to do with this, but it's there. And I was why these don't connect? I don't understand. There were a couple chapters about beetles. I don't know what beetles have to do about the war, and it was just, I don't know. I just did not enjoy it at all, unfortunately, and I was really disappointed because I really thought this was going to be one that I would really enjoy, and so many other people seem to love it. I did not enjoy it at all. I really didn't. I felt like I did not get the story that I was promised, and it just left kind of a sour taste in my mouth, unfortunately. So 2 stars on that one, and yeah, so won't. And then I picked up A Mother's Confession by Kelly Rimmer, and this was recommended to me by Must Read Soon, who was Whitney. And this one blew my mind. I had no idea what this book was about. I had heard of the author and I'd heard good things, so I was excited. And this book, wow, was a very eye-opening study in how you're raising your children and the lessons that you're teaching your children and the lessons of consequences while you're raising your children. It really made me think. And this follows our main character who has just recently lost her husband. He committed suicide. That happens in the very beginning of the book. Actually, it happened, like, this is the aftermath of it. And so she's dealing with that and grieving over that. She's also dealing with their daughter, who's a baby. She is also dealing with his family, or his parents, who live right around the corner from them. They lived right around the corner. And this also follows his mother. So it's our main character plus her mother-in-law. And with the mother-in-law, you really see like him growing up and see how she raised him and lessons she was teaching him, lessons she was not teaching him, and how it shaped him to be the man that he was, because he was not a good person. Like, not even a little bit at all. And you see that kind of unfold throughout the story, and maybe why parts of him are like this. Not saying it's the mother's fault necessarily, but she was not a helper in any sense of the word, even as an adult. And it was just so incredibly interesting. And this mother-in-law had me seething. I have never been so angry at a character before, ever. I was just wanting to scream at her that she's raising a psychopath, because she was raising a psychopath, and now his wife has to deal with that. And just, oh my gosh, it was crazy. And just her love for him was so blinding that it blinded her as well. In her eyes, he could do no wrong. Nobody would ever be good enough for him. Anytime he had a girlfriend, she would just do everything she could to make him see that they're not good enough for him, and make sure he knew that anybody he was with should daily just kiss his feet. And oh, it was so toxic. And our main character, you know, she's dealing with this and then trying to get her life back together after he killed himself, because now her life has changed and she's trying to figure out what her new life is going to look like, because she doesn't really know. And yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. I was not expecting that, and I gave it 5 stars. And the last book that I picked up is Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. And this was recommended to me by Trini2774. I think those are the right numbers. And this one follows 2 young girls living in China, and they are thrown together and become kind of lifelong pen pals, I guess you could say. And they become each other's, like, I guess today you would use the word people, like, you know, you're my person type thing. And they make these vows to always be there for one another and to always stay in touch with each other and to never keep secrets, and, you know, like just a lifelong bond between these 2 young girls. This book made me cry. And I don't cry, you guys. I am not shy about saying that either. I don't cry in books. If a book makes me cry, it is so rare. I think I've maybe cried in a handful of books, maybe. And this one, I was sobbing, just completely sobbing. And I think it was in chapter 3. And I even called my friend Lindsay at Lindsay's Little Library. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can read this book if I'm already sobbing, because she had read it too. She was like, no, just get through that chapter. It gets better after that. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the part that made me sob was they described in detail young girls getting their feet bound, which is a Chinese custom that they used to do, and I can't even talk about it, because they were doing this to 7-year-old girls, and I have a 7-year-old girl, so the only thing in my mind was my baby going through this, and I could not even like fathom. I can't. Nope. All right, so after I got past that, you follow these two girls who do spend their lives communicating with each other, and they do it on a fan, and they have like a secret language that they write messages to each other from. Now, these languages are certain languages that were used by females in this time period, and it was designed to make sure their messages could not be read by men. So it was their own certain like language, and it's something that they had to learn. So they used a fan to, pass back and forth over the years, and you see them coming together a lot, but they also lived separate lives. So they, were both married off into certain families, and there was a lot of politics involved in that. They were all arranged marriages, and you kind of see where their family status comes in and all that stuff. So it was very, very interesting. And you really see them from young girls into old ladies, and it was beautiful. It was written so beautifully. I want to read more from this author for sure. And again, it made me cry, and I don't do that. So 5 stars. Okay, so now for the winner of this quarter. This was hard because I had 3 5-star books. I had Confess by Colleen Hoover, I had A Mother's Confession by Kelly Rimmer, and I had Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. Those are my 3 5 stars, so those are the ones I'm picking from. And I think I'm gonna rule out Colleen because I was expecting to give it 5 stars. I was expecting to love it, and I did. So that one wasn't really a surprise. The other 2, however, were big surprises. I had no idea what they were about, and I just, where did that come from? And they gave me many, many feelings on very different, like so many feelings all over the place. And I think for this round, the winner, oh, it's so hard. It's gonna be Snowflower and the Secret Fan. So Trini, you are the winner for this quarter. If you want to go ahead and send me an email, I have it in the description down below. Make sure you let me know which book you would like sent your way. Let me know how you want it sent, whether it's Book Depository or Amazon, or if you just want to find a book that you want, anything under $15 US, and send me a link, I can do that too. Whatever's easiest for you, and make sure you send me your shipping address so I can send it out to you, and I will get that done as soon as I can. And yeah, congratulations. Thank you very much for the suggestion for this, because I am all on board with Lisa C. I can't wait to read more from her, and this one blew me away, and you made me cry, so thanks for that. Okay guys, that's gonna be it for this wrap up. Now I'm gonna have one more wrap up coming up. I only have 12 more books to read for this whole project, and I plan to have those read by the end of October. So by the end of October, maybe early November, I will have my final wrap up and my final kind of overall thoughts on this project. I will probably do a quarter 4 wrap up and then do an entire wrap up after that. So there'll be 2 separate videos. But yeah, I can't believe I'm almost done. This is crazy. And I have really just read some amazing books. So I've been really enjoying this process. But if you guys have suggested a book for me and I haven't talked about it yet, that means I'm going to be reading it sometime in the next 3 months. So don't worry, I'm getting there. And I have some coming up that I'm really, really excited to read. All right, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day. Bye.